Hello everyone and welcome to this video where I'm going to be doing an in-depth look into Thales aviation parts and block overhaul mod. Now this mod has been existing before the update that the developers released, but now we actually have this mod as part of, well, the mod series, which are going to be out on November 20th. So this pack is absolutely crazy. The stuff you see here isn't even beginning to touch the surface. There's a lot of it, and we're going to be trying to cover most of it, at least so you can see what types of things you can expect. Now, Thales mod is one of those things where it just makes so much sense. The stuff that is here is all stuff that I really wish was in the base game. There's pretty much no reason it's not, other than the fact that I know the developers wanted to keep the inventory sort of limited and not have too many things and redundancies. But it's one of those things where you really think like, alright, this is just really something the base game needs. So I've subscribed, I've not given an award, but I'll give an award, and what we're going to do is we're going to go into the game itself. We are going to start a new game, and then under mods, we're going to turn on the Thales aviation parts and block overhaul. I always disable some of the add-ons like the creatures, natural disasters, stuff like that, but we have the mod on, we have custom, and we're going to start a new game. And in the game now, we are only going to have the Thales pieces. I'm not going to have any other mods because I want to just understand and go through these ones. Alright, so we're going to start off with the basic block overhaul right here. Now, what this is in essence, too long didn't read, we got new blocks based on the original blocks that have reduced drag, included volume, reduced mass, and removed cubes from the inverted pyramids. So pretty much what this gives us now is a wide variety of things that we can do and parts that we can adjust. Now, first of all, we know that there is excess drag caused by the original blocks by 1x2 and 1x4. So now they have reduced drag. They improved the buoyancy. Also, the mass was reduced to help the blocks float on water. It says because either one mass is 10 kilos or 1 liter of water is 0.1. So in essence, these blocks have been revamped, and you could see here there's portions of them removed to allow us to actually build a little bit differently, and I'm going to explain that in a second here. But in addition to the basic block overhaul, we pretty much got new basic blocks of every imaginable type. I'm talking about 1x3, I'm talking about all kinds of different pyramids, including 1x12 it looks like here, like really long wedges, pyramids of 1 and pyramids of 2 and pyramids of 3 and 4 for some of them. We got inverted pyramids as well, and then, this is probably my favorite, we got plates. So I was talking about another video how I wanted to get plates, pretty much a window without the glass, so it's just a plate. We have that now. I'm so happy. It's going to make roof lines for cars way nicer, all that good stuff. We got thin, square, and triangle plates. We then have 10 and 100 mass blocks and a wedge and diagonal pipe. So now you no longer have to look at a stupid ugly square corner piece. You can actually just use the wedge piece. Now hopping in the game here, we're going to start off. You could see we got our low mass 1x1 cube, and it's 0.1. So that's just a regular old block. But we got a half one too. Look at that. So we have a half block, and no, you can't place something on it. Like, that's fair. You know, this is kind of floating. But think about the car roof lines. I always had a kind of a visual problem with something like this. On the trucks, it almost made sense, but on the cars, it really didn't, because it just wasn't really working for me. But take a look at that. Now, in essence, obviously, you'd make this differently and fix up the corners and such, but it now gives you the ability to make actual cars that look much, much better. And that doesn't end there. It gives you the ability to build with half blocks, whether you want thinner walls or whatever the case may be. It just gives you, like, even a countertop in a kitchen type thing. It gives you a visual difference and a bit of, call it a visual relief as well, to see stuff like that. A lot of also decor pieces, even like a fireplace type situation or a desk, could look really nice with these half blocks. Now if you search plate, you actually get what we just have here, but in a different one. So we have the half block, then we have a plate, which is even thinner, and then we have an even thinner plate. I'm talking about pretty much like one single, like just not even there, like almost part of the page, which is pretty impressive. So you get 3 different visual differences. Again, if we compare it to this, it can now act and give you just that variety that you might be looking for in your creations. And in addition to that, we also get these corner pieces that can act kind of like, well, what we have here, or it can be lifted. And I like the back, it almost looks like rubber, so I'm sure there's a lot of different types of applications you can find for something like this. Just visually in the game, a little bit more blocks to build with. Now moving back to this, I'm not going to cover every single one of these things, but you can see here that we have low mass 1x1s that just like the ones we're used to. So these two are the same, except the one on the right hand side is Thales. But if we keep going on here, you can actually now have a 1x3. So this is new. This was no longer previously available to us. And it goes on. So we have a 1x5 of that. 1x6, 8, 10, 12, and even 16. So wings and ships and body lines of vehicles can drastically change with this type of thing. Now this was what I was talking about with the other type of, with the other change where they actually removed this bit, so you can actually end up doing something like that. Because if we take a look at our original 4x4 inverted triangle wedge piece, it looked like this. Now what's interesting about this one is that you cannot remove that, even though they're just silly blocks. Like you kind of see these ones here in the green shouldn't really be there. So in the Thales mod, they're not. So what that lets you do is in your vessel, if you're using this for hull pieces or stuff, you can actually place stuff inside or have like a vent coming through, or even paint it. Like just put decals, like the paintable signs, rather than being pieces that you can't use. Now this is something that's continued on the rest of these, but in essence they've given us now also different sized ones. So we got a 4x8 and 3x4, so a couple different angles and things, especially crazy stuff like this, that I could just see having a lot of visual applications. There are also these pyramid style shapes like this, where previously we didn't have anything like that. The best you could do was this and this, but now look at that nice angle. It's entirely different. So again, just more visual shapes and lines. And again, not worth, well, definitely worth going into, but just not for the sake of this video. Also take a look at that. So that is one of those things that previously you were able to utilize your block. That would be the single 2x2, and you could use something like this previously, but you see that doesn't have the slope. Or you could use the other one, which gives you a slope but nothing else. So it would look like this. And it does not have, well, pretty much this bit here is actually extended, continuous. So while the edge is a 1x2, it's not a triangle, it actually is a square from the top view. Anyways, just really neat things that you can end up doing here with the Thales mod as far as the blocks are concerned. And then the other things we talked about were these pipes. So previously you have to do this, and imagine seeing that kind of sticking out of your wall inside your ship or whatever if you didn't have anywhere to put it. Well, now there's just a very simple piece that's stretched like that. Visually it looks better, and there is the wedge piece as well that's actually enclosed. So you can actually put that, and if you have a bulkhead in a ship, you can just kind of close it off and it doesn't end up looking ugly. So that gives us a large variety of things. Now in here as well, we have the compact handles. So it's a handle that you just place on whatever it is you want rather than having its own block. And you're going to see this is actually continued later on with the other, call it things without blocks. And then you see that we have little things like this. So while yes, it is a bit more to scroll through and kind of understand, especially things like this, they'll just give us those shapes that we previously never had. And honestly, it reminds me of Lego. A lot of these pieces remind me of Lego pieces and how they kind of work in a variety of different orientations to be able to get you to close off and seal off your creation, make it just polished. And actually a lot of these things in Lego were more or less newly released. So what's really cool is it's like in Stormworks, in theory, if it comes out now, it is bringing a new brick to the game for us to use. So a lot of these things can polish up that creation. And see, it just gives us fins, rudders, all kinds of stuff on boats and cars and planes and everything. That was definitely enough talk about the blocks, but I highly recommend you just go and take a look because there is a lot of different stuff that you can end up fixing a lot of things in your creations. Okay, now this mod is called the Thales Aviation parts. So we do have a lot of focus on aviation parts. Specifically here, we have dials. So we have the vertical speed, we got an altitude and airspeed dial that if you program properly, you can actually just read the dial and see the number rather than having to hover over with your mouse. It lets you fly the aircraft. Then we have an offset power block, which you see right here. It actually lets you offset things by half a block, which is insane to think that now you can actually build fully symmetrical creations and have power or sharing whatever going through the half. So that's useful. There is a fixed piston suspension. So this one, it works like an actual suspension. It says the other one was either fully extended or fully retracted depending on the weight. No middle ground. This one works properly. Compact rope anchor. This is awesome. It says that you can now use this and attach ropes without having the block beneath it. And you'll see something else for the hose, I think. Then we have a powerful modular engine alternator. Lets you pretty much use the alternator as a generator because otherwise it's just way too weak. You're better off putting a generator in your engine than just the alternator. So this is nice for vehicles and things. So you don't have to have the bulky generators. You just have the alternator. And lastly, we got a bunch of new seats, including here 2 block wide pilot seat, and it also goes to vehicle seats as well. So if we look at the Thales dials, the first thing you'll see here is how detailed they are. And if we look at the description for the actual part, it tells us how we can use it. So it says, to make it work correctly, configure it like this. 160 is the min, max is 320, and then you put a function with this, and then the actual value that you see here will accurately be represented from your vehicle. You don't have to have a computer display with a huge Lua code. You just use this and it gets you the information you need right when you look at it. So these are fantastic. What a simple and cool thing. And I would actually love to see this for cars as well with kilometers an hour, miles an hour and stuff like that. So that's the one thing. Then we have that half offset block that I was talking about. And yes, this is now something where you can actually have RPS coming in. And then on the part that you don't see here, you can have RPS coming out. And what that lets you do is if you build symmetrically, meaning if you put your seat in the center like this, technically this lets you have, like your propeller would be here, where this is. But what if your seat is now too wide and you build the rest of your plane fully symmetrical? Or what if you use a car for that instance that is using symmetrical? So it's not a normal width here. The car itself was made and then cut by 1 block. And you can see here too, it's 8 blocks wide instead of the 9 blocks wide. So what I did actually, and you'll see when I walk to this vehicle, is I added some things to it. Now the original one, using all original parts, you sit inside, you have your seat, You have your seat back here. Okay. And we could not put a trailer hitch because the vehicle wasn't even size. So you can see here we got these two towing anchors, but we couldn't put one in the center. Well, now we can. So that block I used here, I just added my electric connector to it, and it perfectly centers the trailer. So now I can actually tow a trailer with this car. And not only that, I threw the seats in, so now I actually have a center console, and you can see I could sit here. This is a 2 wide seat, and I actually put a full second row with 3 seats in the back that are wall to wall. So first of all, this truck, just by that, fixed it up immensely, and now I could actually use it properly. But it's stuff like that that feels like it should have been in the game from the get-go, because it just feels so right. So while the pistons look the same, the one that Thales made said that it actually is going to extend no matter what, rather than the other one that is pretty much always either extended or not. It kind of pushes and forces it, whereas here, it lets you bounce around on it. Now I don't mean physically, but I mean if you were to attach a creation to this and this one would settle or be extended, whereas this one presumably would actually allow the proper movement like a suspension. Now the alternator that we don't have to get into, they look exactly the same, except this one is 5 times stronger, so it actually works a lot better, and frankly I don't see a problem with that. It just works and lets you charge your vehicle up. And then we have all the seats. So there are a lot of seats. I kind of showed them in that one vehicle, but we have a reclined driver's seat, so it's a little lower. We have a regular driver's seat. So you can see here, this block you can actually put in a car, and it's physically one whole thing lower. This is more for like a truck. It's a bit lifted up, and this is more for like a sedan or a sports car. Then we have a pilot seat reclined, so same thing, except instead of the steering wheel, it's a pilot seat, and then we have a regular pilot seat. Note that these are all 2 wide, which is super cool. Then we have this old, which I'm not quite sure what this means, but I think it refers to the style, because otherwise it looks quite similar. And then we have some other stuff. If we just circle over here, we have a passenger seat. So no controls. So for your vehicles, we have a regular passenger seat. And then I believe, well, we already talked about the handle, but note that because Thales is actually an old mod that's just been redone into this new style, you don't get the on and off output that you get with the one that has a block. So keep that in mind, though I think for most people that won't really matter. This is where it gets really fun. Now we have compact cooling systems. We also have slim fluid tanks. We also have fluid pumps that are small and a compact hose anchor. This is so cool. And not only that, we now have more wheels. So we get wheels without the base block. We get narrow wheels. We also get caster wheels. So there's a lot of different stuff. Again, all kind of aimed at aircrafts, but I think this can be used pretty much for anything. So this is super cool. The fact we get this hose anchor block that doesn't have that massive ugly block part of it lets you really, I mean, for example, you can make a creation with a bunch of industrial type stuff and you just do that. And take a look how that looks. That looks perfect in that kind of setting where you don't have a body. Obviously, if you have a car body, then you're fine to put the old style anchor. But this just lets you really make a nice little thing. Now, other than that, we now have the pumps. So this is actually really awesome. And if I could just find it here, well, I'm just going to search up pump. We get these small pumps. Now, previously, we do have pumps that are similar, but they're the impeller pumps. This is not an impeller pump. This is a regular on and off style pump that you turn on just like you turn on, well, that, but also the regular fluid pump or the large pump. So now this gives us a so-called small pump, because even here, the regular pump is still 3x1, whereas these are just 1x1, just so simple, so beautiful. And you can have this one going in straight and this one coming through at an angle, allowing you for, just very small sump pumps if you want, or in your creations or whatever. So I love it. It's 0.3 the strength of the 30% of the regular fluid pump, so it's pretty weak, but doesn't matter. The fact is you can now put a pump with an on and off in a small creation or in a small tight space, and it can still get the job done. So I applaud that. I think something like that is amazing. Then we also have that slim fluid tank. So previously we obviously have our large and medium and small guys, but what about something that looks like this, that can be placed under a car seat, for example, and can just even look like a block? Because before, if you look at any one of my cars, I have a floorboard that looks like that, whereas this just conceals it so nicely. You could even paint over it, and there's actually a fluid tank in there. So I think that's also just a no-brainer idea that's so good and smart, and I'm amazed that like that wasn't there before. Just such a simple and cool type of thing. And lastly here we got the radiators. So we now have a very small radiator and this U-shaped radiator, in addition then obviously to our existing radiator, and then we have the new electric ones. But what's nice about these ones is you can physically build, well, this one you can build between it, so it gives you much more nice configuration in a vehicle setting. And this one's smaller, which for a lot of vehicles that I make, like for example the Sea-Doo, the ATV, that stuff like that, I just skipped putting a radiator altogether because there's just no space for it. But now you can actually put a radiator 3x2, really nice size, or this one, and have parts going through it and just really giving you that flexibility without breaking the game by any means. I think these fit really nice in with the existing game lore. Now the wheels, they added a lot of different stuff, presumably for airplanes. It is called the airplane or aviation mod, but what's cool about this is it gives you a very nice caster wheel for your airplane, and then also it gives you just a narrow wheel that you could use kind of however you see fit. If I could find out how to attach it, just like that, without having anything inside. So it's not obviously no suspension, but what's really neat is it's very easy to place, and it kind of looks like a tractor wheel for this case, but it could for sure be used as a plane wheel. And then we have the same thing for our regular wheels, but they're without that internal bit. I'm quite curious if we expand this. Okay, it kind of grows from the center. Cool, but it does look to be the same height, so if you had it like this, it actually would work out and wouldn't, like, one wouldn't be smaller than the other. But I like it. See, it's properly narrow, like just one block wide no matter what, whereas this one does have a little bit of overhang, which is like the original ones. Now the windows here that are mentioned and on the slides to come are going to be mind-blowing, because this is one of the things where the game has always been a little bit lacking, and now we get modular windows. So forget the fact that we're going to get also different shapes. We get windows that we could build ourselves with glass pieces as large as we want inside. Now in addition to that, we get propellers, so 3-size propellers, as they work like aircraft propellers, no rotor drag, heavy on the torque. So good, it says for seaplanes. I'll take his word for that. But you can see here we have a smaller propeller. This is a 2-meter one. Then we get a 3-meter one, and lastly a 4-meter propeller. And they have an external and an internal one, so you could use it like that, or have double ones attached. And of course they have the roll, collective, and pitch. So that is the propellers. Frankly, I would love to see a really small one. I've always said I wanted to see one that's like, I want a drone. I want to make one that's like 1x1 or 3x3, tiny little propeller that I could make on a really small drone with a small battery and kind of fly around and search out things. But anyway, we'll see if that comes. I'm sure it will one day. But onto the windows. Now, the windows are probably the biggest thing in Thales, and the reason why I'm saying that is because it opens up a whole new possibility. So you can see these are edge corner pieces here, and now we have to find the corresponding flat one like this that we could then mount here. But what's really sweet is now we can build whatever size windows we want. We're no longer limited by having to work with 3x3s or whatever. So it kind of opens up a lot of possibilities. Granted, the windows never really bothered me, but it is nice to be able to get pretty much custom glass. Now I did mess up. You could see here we have the arrows, whereas on this side I don't. So that means this part has to be flipped. And that the reason it's modular like this is it pretty much acts like the doors in the original game. So in order to seal it, you have to make sure all the arrows are pointed in the same direction. And now here is the frameless one. You can see this one's actually at an angle, so we don't want that. Here is the flat one. So that would actually get us a nice big piece of glass, much bigger than we previously have. And I saw like in this angle I got a little bit of a, yeah, so you get a little bit of that like reflection, but it is also pretty clear, which is nice. It doesn't give us constant glare like some of the XML mods that I've seen. Anyway, you can make your windows as well in like bent or diagonal orientation, angled I suppose, so you don't have to make it upright like this. So it gives us the ability to angle it as well. So the windows are a game changer. Now we also have modular wings and control surfaces. Now I'm not going to go into this, you could just take a look at these photos here, but pretty much they give us lift like the wing piece that we get in the game. Now I will show you that. And we also get a bunch of different control surfaces. So you end up with a lot more modifications to your airplanes that you would normally have, therefore giving them different shaped wings and just overall changing their shape and their visually making them different. Now I know I sound a bit like a broken record there, but what I want to say is that in a building game like this, you want to have the freedom and the flexibility to build things your own way. So if you only give people one method of doing it, then it's all going to end up looking more or less similar. Whereas when you give people a wide variety of things, and not even a wide variety, just more than what was originally given, then they can work with that a lot better. So we have these, and these actually have rotation, and there's many more, so I'm not covering all of them. And then we have the wing middles and stuff. So what this kind of acts as, it gives us lift, and the closest thing we have to that in the base game are these wing sections. So we have currently this really thick, bulky medium size, I guess. Then we have a huge large, which is kind of, it looks very outdated. It looks like something from the original game, because this should only be this back block, and all the rest of this is just cubes. Anyways, you could build your own. And then there's this. Now I learned the hard way when I started using these on my ships to save weight, because they only weigh 5, and then my boat started to lift off because they actually give you lift. So that's a mistake I learned the hard way. Anyways, now we get a lot more wing pieces, and ones that don't have that kind of textured front. Like you'll see here on the small one, you get that like really textured front, whereas here they're just cubed or just blocked. Now even the textured one, you could still build right through it, but then you'd end up seeing what you've done. Like it's kind of, I don't mind it. I'm happy that they allowed that, but these ones act in a bit of a different way. On to the next page here. Now Thales explains his naming system and tooltips and presets. Pretty much this is what I cover in my other video where I give the Stormworks developers suggestions to prevent the modders from having to do something like this, just because unfortunately it'd be nicer to have a better organization. But you could search MTH and you get all the Thales parts. Now these are the new windows. A lot of stuff is going on here. You have, first of all, even 1x1 blocked windows are different, because the original ones would have 2 centimeter frame, resulting in a 4 centimeter middle, whereas these are all giving you a 3 centimeter kind of frame. So that's cool. Then also they could be placed like this. They're thinner framed. That allows you to have a window like this and free up your dial. Then you also can get a bunch of side windows of different sizes and make a lot of intricate shapes. I really recommend this. This is also one of the biggest and best things about Thales, is you can enclose your creation while still having a nice shaped window. Now you see here that there are just so many different shapes, and even just to learn how to configure them will take some time. I have not spent enough time, but we're not talking about the modular ones. Obviously the modular ones I showed you where you can kind of build your own modular window, but in addition to that, we actually just get proper like corner pieced windows that you could use like that are going 1x2 pyramid shaped, so we didn't previously have that before. We also have inverse ones of those, and just a lot of different other pieces that you can kind of blend into making a modular window. You see here how the glass is oriented. It doesn't have a frame going through it. So that's just a super simple example of what you can do. And look at that. So you could see exactly how the glass reflects, but it's one piece, so you don't have that frame going through it. Now I'm not going to get into making intricate windows right now with you guys, but you'll have to take my word for it and just look at these pictures that Thales put up. So you could see that using the 1x2, 2x2 pyramid inverse, you can end up making like a full-on cube or circular shape, spherical, not cube, spherical shape like this, and we have a lot of them. So it gives us the ability to, without having the ugly frames, you could see how it's kind of like, I don't want to say lumpy, but you could see how it is like the low poly style, but they're continuous windows. They're not framed everywhere you look. So it looks awesome, and I'm quite happy to use this in a lot of creations. This is pretty self-explanatory. We get awesome new doors with windows. So that's one of the things that I found the game lacking from the get-go. I love the doors that slide, but I want a sliding glass door, like what a yacht would have. But anyways, in addition to that, we get these really nice doors, we get offset versions, and we get divided blocks. So they improve creativity. Like what is said here, they're intended for creating really nice shapes and curves in your vehicles and stuff. And then the plates that I talked about earlier in this video, you can also end up with those, and they just, again, for creativity, for making it look nice. But I will show you the doors. So we have the hinged door like this. We get hinged offset, so you can see that they pretty much just work on the opposite direction. Meaning, if you plop a hole here and plop a hole here, you can grab this and place it flush, and you can grab this and place it flush. So both work in a similar sense, but you could see how one side can be colored, whereas this side cannot be, and then that side can be colored. And they open in the opposite direction. So this one opens outwards, whereas this one will open inwards, and of course it can't go now because of what I'm trying to do. But you see that based on that hinge, this one opens with the hinge, this one opens on the other side of the hinge. And then we get the glass little hatch door. We get a really nice half-sized or half-height door, so you still have to crouch to get through it, but it works well for small spaces, like an engine room, for example, and then you get your full-size doors that you can also just normally use. But love the fact they have windows. Just, they're probably the nicest looking doors in the game. Compared to the two other ones that are already in Stormworks, I would say these are nicer. And then finishing off the last two images here, there's continued basic blocks. So we kind of went through this with the different wedges and shapes and pyramids and how they kind of made the holes so you could place things yourself. So that's optimized. And then here they have the seats, the pilot seat, passenger and driver's seat. They are too wide, which is really nice. And it says that the voxels are smaller for placement of instruments, so they actually give you the ability to put more instruments all around them. And we have a crankshaft piece with a medium diesel sound engine, and then the compact handle we talked about. I want to see if we can make the engine sound like a medium engine. You could see the little note there. If we go into the engine bay, I'm wondering if we have to replace all of the crankshafts or only one. Let's first try with one. So let's just put that here and see what happens. So in this case, Nope, still sounds the same. So I'm guessing we got to replace them all. Now to replace them all, there is one or two that have some RPS. So I've replaced them all. Let's see how it sounds now. Hopefully nicer. Let's see. Oh yeah. That does sound nice. A little more refined for sure. That sounds more like a car. Maybe more of a performance car, but definitely a little more vehicle car related. So I like it. I'd probably use this, especially if they come up with more sounds, which I'm sure they will. But yeah, that's a nice sound. So thank you all for exploring the Thales mod with me. It's honestly a really cool mod that I think can gain a lot of traction in this game, just because it gives us pieces that feel so right. A lot of times I find myself forgetting that we don't actually have these at our disposal, and instead, like even that, like I find myself wondering why we don't have these and how the game would just work a little bit better. I mean, obviously I love Stormworks, the base game, so much, so I have no problem with what we have in the base game, but it really is nice to have smaller pumps, to have the fluid connector that's small. I wonder why we don't have a cable connector that's small, actually. Like this hose anchor piece here. We're not going to put it on the truck, but see, that actually even looks the same. But imagine now in an industrial setting where you have it popping out. Anyway, point is, we don't have the cable one yet, I believe. No, we don't. See, the cable one still looks like that. So I think the next logical step is to give us just that little nub on the end as its own standalone thing. But regardless, we have stuff that feels so right, it feels so good, and I'm quite happy to use Thales in my creations. We'll just see how the mod is implemented on November 20th, because as long as we have the ability to use these things, at least to an extent of when I upload my creation. But anyways, that's for a different video, and it is in a different video, so I recommend you take a look. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for more videos, stay tuned for more creations, and as always, happy Stormworksing everyone. See you next time.